Adanna Okafor thought she was over Daniel Mensah, until her sister Chisholm announced she was marrying him. The same man Adanna loved in silence for 3 years. The same man who walked away and left her picking up the pieces with nothing but a text message. Now he belonged to her sister, and Adanna was expected to smile, show up, and stand beside them as maid of honor. A week-long wedding in Seoul. One Hanok estate packed with guests. Too many memories. Too many wounds that never healed. To survive it, Adanna brought a date. Park Min-jun, her best friend. The man who'd always been there. The one who knew every version of her, even the broken ones. He owed her a favor, and pretending to be her fiancé should have been simple. Safe. Controlled. Except it wasn't. Fake smiles turned into lingering touches. Pretend kisses started to feel dangerously real. And the man she trusted as her shield began to look like the only place she'd ever belonged. When the line finally broke, it wasn't gentle. Min-jun's back pressed her against the hotel room wall, his breathing ragged, his hands framing her face like she was something precious he was terrified of losing. "You have no idea what you've done to me," he said, his voice low, raw, his Korean accent thick with emotion. "I've been replaying every sound you made, every way you came apart from me." His grip tightened on her waist. "I'm not letting that go. I'm not letting you go." His thumb brushed her lower lip. Steady. Certain. "I don't just want you," he murmured. "I want to keep you. I want you to understand you were never disposable. Not to me. Never to me." Now Adanna had to choose, keep pretending, or risk losing the one man who never betrayed her for the one love she was never supposed to fall into. If you're already hooked, smash that subscribe button because this story is about to get messy in the best way possible. And comment below if you've ever caught feelings for your best friend. Let's suffer together. 72 hours earlier, Adanna had been having a perfectly normal Tuesday evening in her London flat. She'd survived a brutal meeting with her marketing team, dodged her mother's daily, "When are you settling down?" interrogation, and was halfway through a bowl of jollof rice when her phone lit up with a video call from Seoul. Chisholm's face filled the screen, radiant with the kind of joy that made Adanna's chest tighten with a feeling she refused to name as jealousy. Her younger sister had always been the softer one, the one with easy smiles and natural charm that made strangers want to protect her. At 25, Chisholm looked like she'd swallowed the sun. "Ada. Oh my God, I have the most amazing news." Adanna forced a smile, scooping rice into her mouth. "You finally learned to cook without burning the kitchen down?" "Better." Chisholm practically squealed, then shifted the camera angle. "I'm getting married." The rice turned to ash in Adanna's throat. Because sliding into frame with his arm wrapped possessively around her sister was Daniel Mensah. Daniel, with his perfect fade and dimpled smile. Daniel, who dated Adanna for 3 years before vanishing to Seoul with nothing but a coward's text message about finding himself. Daniel, who apparently found himself directly in her baby sister's arms. "Surprise." Chisholm sang, oblivious to the way Adanna's hand had frozen halfway to her mouth, to the way her entire world had just tilted sideways. "I know this seems sudden, but Ada, he's everything. He makes me feel seen in ways I never knew I needed. And guess what? The wedding is in 1 week. At this gorgeous traditional Hanok estate in Seoul. It's going to be this beautiful fusion of our cultures, Nigerian and Ghanaian traditions blending with Korean customs. And you'll be my maid of honor, right? Please say yes. I need my big sister there. I can't do this without you." Daniel's eyes finally met the camera, and he had the decency to look uncomfortable, his smile faltering at the edges. Adanna's face arranged itself into something resembling happiness. "Of course. I wouldn't miss it for anything." The second the call ended, she hurled her phone across the room. It bounced off the couch cushions and clattered onto the hardwood floor while Adanna shoved both hands into her braids and screamed into the empty apartment. 3 years. She'd given Daniel 3 years of her life. She'd learned to make his favorite dishes, met his entire extended family, endured his mother's passive-aggressive comments about her career ambitions. She'd imagined their future, marriage, children, growing old together. And he'd destroyed it all with a text message, "I need space to find myself. You deserve better than what I can give you right now." Apparently what he needed to find was her sister. Her phone rang again, and she almost ignored it until she saw Min-jun's name flashing on the screen. She grabbed it, pressing it to her ear. "Please tell me you're sitting down," Adanna said without preamble. Min-jun's voice came through warm and familiar, carrying that slight Korean accent that 5 years of friendship had made as comforting as home. "I'm in my office, so technically yes." "What happened? You sound like you're planning a murder." "My sister is marrying my ex-boyfriend." Silence stretched across the line, broken only by the faint sound of Seoul traffic in the background. "Then, I need you to repeat that because I don't think I heard you correctly." You heard perfectly. Chisholm and Daniel. Wedding bells, white dresses, the whole catastrophic production. 1 week from now. In Seoul. Adanna laughed, but it came out jagged and wrong. And she wants me as her maid of honor because apparently the universe thinks my suffering is entertainment. Adanna, that's... I'm fine, she cut him off, her voice too sharp, too bright. Completely fine. It's been 2 years since Daniel ended things. I'm totally over him. Water under the bridge. This is fine. You just said fine 3 times in 8 seconds. What's your point? She heard him exhale, could picture him running his fingers through his dark hair the way he always did when he was thinking through a problem. They'd met 5 years ago during her semester abroad at Fiancé University. He'd been assigned as her buddy, Seoul's version of a cultural ambassador for international students, and they'd bonded over her complete inability to use chopsticks and his terrible attempts at cooking Nigerian food. What started as convenience had evolved into necessity. He was the person she called at 3 a.m. London time when insomnia struck. The one who remembered she was allergic to shellfish and hated action movies. The friend who'd stayed on video chat for 6 hours when her father died, not saying much, just being there while she fell apart. And she'd done the same for him. She still had the scar on her palm from the night a bar fight broke out during his company dinner in London. She'd seen the broken glass coming for his face and moved without thinking, her hand taking the hit instead. He'd held her bloody palm in the emergency room and told her she was insane and that he'd never be able to repay her. Come to Seoul, Min-jun said now, his voice steady and sure. Stay with me. We'll get through this together. I can't ask you to babysit me through my sister's wedding. You're not asking. I'm offering. Besides, remember when I had to face my ex at my cousin's wedding last year? You flew to Seoul and pretended to be my girlfriend for an entire weekend. You laughed at all her pointed comments and made me look like I'd upgraded. This is just returning the favor. Adanna closed her eyes, remembering that weekend. Min-jun's ex had been beautiful and cruel, her smiles sharp as knives. Adanna had held Min-jun's hand through the whole ordeal, whispered reassurances when doubt crept into his eyes, and made sure everyone saw him as the one who got away. That was different. Your ex wasn't marrying your family. True. But the principle stands. You need backup, and I'm the best backup you've got. She wanted to argue, but the thought of walking into that wedding alone, of watching Daniel pledge forever to her sister while pretending her heart wasn't breaking all over again, made her stomach turn. There's another problem. Just one? My mother. Adanna groaned, pressing her free hand against her forehead. She's been relentless, Min-jun. Every day it's the same interrogation. Adanna, when are you bringing someone home? Your sister is younger and she's engaged. I want grandchildren before I die. Your father would be so disappointed. She mimicked her mother's accent, then let her head fall back against the couch. Last week I panicked and told her I was seeing someone seriously. The pause on the other end lasted too long. How seriously? I may have used the word engaged. Adanna. I know. I know it was stupid. But she wouldn't stop, and the lie fell out of my mouth before I could stop it. She could feel the panic rising in her chest again. Now I have to show up to this wedding where my ex is marrying my sister, and explain to my entire family why my fiancé mysteriously doesn't exist. My mother will never let me live it down. She'll spend the whole week giving me those pitying looks and introducing me to every single man at the wedding like I'm a charity case. The silence stretched again, filled only by the sound of both of them breathing. Then Min-jun spoke, his voice careful, measured. What if he did exist? What are you talking about? Your fiancé. What if you actually brought him to the wedding? Adanna sat up straighter, her heart starting to pound. Min-jun, I can't just hire some random actor off the internet. I'm not talking about an actor. I'm talking about me. The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment Adanna forgot how to breathe. You want to pretend to be my fiancé? Why not? Min-jun's voice was steady, reasonable, like he was proposing they grab coffee instead of staging an elaborate deception. Think about it. We've known each other for 5 years. Your mother's met me multiple times when she visited Seoul. We're comfortable together. We know each other's habits, our stories would line up naturally. It would be completely believable. Adanna's brain was short-circuiting. Min-jun, this is insane. Is it? You literally took a shard of glass from me. You have a permanent scar because you didn't hesitate to protect me. I'd say pretending to be engaged for a week is the least I can do. That's ridiculously dramatic. Says the woman who just threw her phone across the room. Despite the chaos spinning in her chest, Adanna felt her lips twitch. This isn't some romantic comedy. This is my life. My family. My sister's wedding. I know. And that's exactly why you shouldn't have to face it alone. His voice softened. Look, I'll fly you out, you stay at my place in Gangnam, we attend the wedding events together, I play the doting fiancé, and afterward we tell everyone it didn't work out. Mutual decision. No hard feelings. Clean break. Nothing about this is clean. Maybe not. But it's better than the alternative, isn't it? Better than showing up alone and having Daniel and your entire family watch you pretend you're fine when you're clearly not. Adanna closed her eyes, and the image hit her with brutal clarity, walking into that Hannock estate alone, watching Chisholm float down the aisle in white toward the man who'd promised Adanna forever, enduring a week of sympathetic looks and whispered conversations. Her mother's disappointment. Daniel's pity. Chisholm's oblivious happiness that would feel like glass in her wounds. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, I'll do it. We'll do it. Fake engagement. 1 week. Then it's over. She could hear the smile in his voice. Send me your flight details. I'll pick you up from Incheon. Min-jun? Yeah? Thank you. For this. For everything. That's what best friends are for, right? She hung up and stared at the ceiling, wondering what she'd just agreed to and why her heart was racing in a way that had nothing to do with Daniel. Later, Adanna stepped off the plane at Incheon International Airport with a carry-on full of clothes she'd panic bought and a stomach full of regrets. Seoul hit her with the force of a memory, the smell of the city, the rapid-fire Korean announcements, the organized chaos of one of the world's busiest airports. Min-jun was waiting at arrivals with a sign that read, "Fake Fiancé," in both English and Korean. Despite everything, Adanna laughed. You're an idiot, she said as she approached him. You're idiot for the next week. He grinned, pulling her into a hug that felt like coming home. He smelled like his usual cologne and something else, something warm that she'd never been able to identify but had always associated with safety. How was the flight? Long, terrible. I watched 3 romantic comedies and they all made me want to throw myself out of the emergency exit. Good thing you didn't. Would have made the fake engagement storyline much harder to sell. He grabbed her suitcase, leading her toward the exit. Ready for this? Absolutely not. His apartment in Gangnam was exactly as she remembered, modern, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering Seoul skyline. The guest room was already prepared, fresh sheets on the bed, towels folded neatly on the dresser. Make yourself at home, Min-jun said, leaning against the doorframe. We should probably go over our story. Make sure we're consistent. Adanna dropped onto the bed, exhaustion hitting her all at once. Our story. How we got engaged. When. Why. The details matter. He pulled out his phone, opening the Notes app. I was thinking we'd tell people it happened 3 months ago. I flew to London, took you to that restaurant you love near the Thames. What's it called? Sketches. Right. Sketches. I proposed there. Small, intimate, just us. Very on brand for both of us. Adanna watched him type, something twisting in her chest. He'd clearly thought about this, about making it believable. And the ring? Min-jun reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond, elegant and understated. My grandmother's, he said quietly. She gave it to me before she died, told me to give it to someone who mattered. I figured you qualify. Min-jun, I can't. It's temporary. 1 week. Then you give it back. But his eyes were serious as he held it out to her. Try it on. Make sure it fits. Her hands were shaking as she slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, the gold warm against her skin. She stared at it, this symbol of a promise they weren't really making, and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Perfect, Min-jun said, his voice a little rough. Okay. Other ground rules. We need to be comfortable with each other. Holding hands. Casual touches. Nothing that would make either of us uncomfortable, but enough to sell it. Right. Believable couple behavior. Exactly. He sat down on the bed beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. We've got the welcome dinner tonight at the Hannock estate. That's when you'll see Daniel and Chisholm for the first time. Your mom will be there, extended family, some of the wedding party. First impressions matter. Adanna's stomach churned. What if I can't do this? What if I see him and just fall apart? Min-jun's hand found hers, his fingers threading through hers with the ease of long practice. Then you squeeze my hand and I'll get you out of there. I've got you, Adanna. That's the whole point of this. She looked at their intertwined hands, at the ring glinting on her finger, and wondered when exactly her best friend's touch had started feeling like the only solid thing in her world. The Hanok estate was breathtaking, traditional Korean architecture blending seamlessly with modern luxury. Lanterns glowed in the courtyard, and the smell of Korean barbecue mixed with the rich spices of Nigerian jollof rice drifted through the air. The wedding was meant to be a fusion, a celebration of both cultures, and someone had clearly spared no expense. Adanna stepped out of Min-jun's car wearing a navy dress that hugged her curves, her braids swept up into an elegant bun. Min-jun appeared beside her in a perfectly tailored black suit, and when he offered his arm, she took it. "Remember," he murmured as they walked toward the entrance. "You're happy. You're in love. You're here to support your sister, not to fall apart over your ex." "Easy for you to say. I never said it was easy. I just said that's what we're doing." He squeezed her hand. "Breathe, Adanna." The moment they stepped inside, Adanna's mother descended on them like a force of nature. Ngozi Okafor was a small woman with the presence of someone twice her size, her traditional Nigerian attire vibrant against the muted tones of the Hanok interior. "Adanna. You're here." She pulled her daughter into a crushing hug, then immediately turned to Min-jun, switching to rapid Igbo that he definitely didn't understand. "And this is him? The man who finally captured my daughter's heart?" Min-jun smiled, bowing slightly in the traditional Korean gesture of respect. "Mrs. Okafor, it's wonderful to see you again." Ngozi switched back to English, her eyes shrewd as she studied him. "You're planning to marry my daughter?" "Yes, ma'am. If she'll have me." Ngozi circled him like a predator assessing prey. "You have a good job. You can provide for her?" "Mom," Adanna hissed, mortified. "I'm a software engineer at Samsung," Min-jun said smoothly. "And yes, I can provide for her. Though Adanna's perfectly capable of providing for herself. One of the many things I love about her." Ngozi's expression softened slightly. "Where will you live? Korea or London?" "We haven't decided yet," Adanna cut in before Min-jun could answer. "We're taking it one step at a time." "And grandchildren?" "Mom." Min-jun laughed, his hands settling at the small of Adanna's back in a gesture that looked completely natural. "We're focused on the wedding first, Mrs. Okafor. But when the time is right, we'll definitely want children." Adanna's head snapped toward him, but he was still smiling at her mother, completely calm. The casual way he talked about their imaginary future sent heat rushing through her veins. "Good," Ngozi said firmly. "Chisholm is giving me one grandchild. You'll give me 3. We should find our seats," Adanna said desperately, grabbing Min-jun's hand and practically dragging him away from her mother. "3 kids," she whispered once they were out of earshot. "Really?" Min-jun grinned. "Your mom's intimidating." I panicked. "You don't panic. You're the calmest person I know." "Yeah, well, there's a first time for everything." And then Adanna saw him. Daniel stood across the courtyard, laughing at something Chisholm said, his arm around her sister's waist. He looked good, he always looked good, but it was Chisholm who was radiant, practically glowing with happiness in a traditional Korean hanbok modified to fit her curves. The pain hit Adanna like a physical blow, sharp and breathtaking. 2 years. She thought 2 years would be enough time to heal, to move on, to not care anymore. But seeing him like this, seeing him happy with her sister, reopened every wound she'd carefully tried to close. Min-jun's hand tightened on hers. "Breathe," he murmured. "I can't." "Yes, you can. Look at me." She tore her eyes away from Daniel to meet Min-jun's steady gaze. "You're okay," Min-jun said softly, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "You're going to get through this. We're going to get through this." Before Adanna could respond, Chisholm spotted them and let out a delighted squeal. "Ada. You made it." She rushed over, Daniel trailing behind her, and pulled Adanna into an enthusiastic hug. "And you brought Min-jun. Oh my God, I'm so glad you're both here." Chisholm pulled back, and that's when she noticed the ring. Her eyes went wide, her hand flying to her mouth. "Ada. Ada. Are you engaged?" Adanna managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Yes. Min-jun proposed 3 months ago." The squeal that came out of Chisholm could have shattered glass. "Why didn't you tell me? This is amazing. We can have a double celebration." She grabbed Adanna's hand, examining the ring with the enthusiasm of someone who had no idea she was twisting a knife. "It's beautiful. So elegant. So you." Daniel stepped forward, extending his hand to Min-jun. "Congratulations, man. I'm Daniel. Chisholm's fiancé." Min-jun, Adanna's fiancé. The handshake was brief, professional, but Adanna caught the way Min-jun's jaw tightened slightly. "Congratulations to you both as well." Daniel's eyes slid to Adanna, and something flickered in them, regret, maybe, or guilt. Adanna. You look great. Thanks. The word came out clipped. You too. An awkward silence descended, broken only by Chisholm's continued gushing about the ring, the wedding, how perfect everything was. Adanna felt like she was drowning, the walls closing in, her chest getting tighter with every passing second. Min-jun must have sensed it because his arms slipped around her waist, pulling her against his side. Chisholm, the ring is actually a family heirloom. My grandmother's. She was very specific about who should wear it. That's so romantic. Chisholm clasped her hands together. You have to tell me the proposal story. Was it dramatic? Did he get down on one knee? I need all the details. How about we save that for later? Min-jun suggested smoothly. I think dinner is about to start, and I'm starving. Adanna's been promising to teach me how to eat Nigerian food without embarrassing myself. Chisholm laughed. Good luck with that. Ada's brutal when it comes to cultural education. As they moved toward the dining area, Daniel hung back, catching Adanna's arm. Can we talk? Just for a minute? Min-jun stiffened beside her, but Adanna nodded. It's fine. I'll catch up. I'll save you a seat, Min-jun said, his eyes searching hers for confirmation that she was okay. She managed a small nod, and he squeezed her hand before walking away. Daniel led her to a quiet corner of the courtyard, away from the growing crowd. Up close, Adanna could see the lines of stress around his eyes, the way his smile didn't quite reach them anymore. I know this is weird, Daniel started. Weird? You're marrying my sister, Daniel. Weird doesn't begin to cover it. He winced. I never meant for this to happen. When I came to Seoul, I was genuinely trying to figure myself out. And then I met Chisholm at a networking event, and we just clicked. I didn't know she was your sister at first. By the time I realized, we were already in love. Adanna's voice was sharp. How convenient. Adanna. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to ask for my understanding or my blessing or whatever it is you're looking for right now. Her hands were shaking, and she clenched them into fists to hide it. You left me with a text message, Daniel. 3 years together and you couldn't even break up with me to my face. You said you needed to find yourself, and what you found was my baby sister. I know I hurt you. I know I was a coward. His voice dropped. But I never stopped caring about you. And seeing you here with Min-jun, are you happy? Really happy? The question caught her off guard. She thought about Min-jun's steady presence, the way he dropped everything to help her, the ring on her finger that felt more real than it should. That's none of your business anymore. I want you to be happy, Adanna. You deserve that. What I deserve is for you to leave me alone. She turned to walk away, then stopped. But for what it's worth, Chisholm does seem happy. Try not to destroy her the way you destroyed me. She walked away before he could respond, her heels clicking against the stone pathway. Her hands were still shaking, her breath coming in short gasps, and she had to stop in a shadowed alcove to collect herself. She heard footsteps and looked up to find Min-jun standing there, holding 2 glasses of wine. Thought you might need this, he said quietly, offering her one. Adanna took it and downed half the glass in one go. How did you know where to find me? I've been watching you since we got here. You have this tell when you're about to break down, you start rubbing your thumb against your index finger. He demonstrated, and Adanna realized she'd been doing exactly that. You were doing it when you walked away with Daniel, so I figured you'd need backup when you finished. Something cracked in her chest. You were watching me? Always. The word was simple, honest, and it landed between them with unexpected weight. That's the job, right? Fake fiancé and all. Right. The job. They stood there in the alcove, the sounds of the party filtering through the night air, and Adanna felt something shift. The way Min-jun was looking at her, it wasn't the way he usually looked at her. There was something different in his eyes, something that made her pulse quicken. We should get back, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yeah. We should. Neither of them moved. Min-jun. The dinner bell just rang, he interrupted, stepping back and offering his arm. Come on, fake fiancé. Let's go pretend to be in love. But as they walked back to the dining hall, Adanna couldn't shake the feeling that they were pretending less than they should be. The dinner was a masterclass in cultural fusion and subtle torture. Long tables were laden with Korean dishes, bulgogi, kimchi, japchae, alongside Nigerian staples like jollof rice, egusi soup, and suya. The wedding party sat at the head table, which meant Adanna spent 2 hours directly across from Daniel and Chisholm, watching them feed each other and laugh at inside jokes while her mother grilled Min-jun about his family history. So your parents live in Busan? Ngozi asked, spearing a piece of beef. Yes, ma'am. My father's a doctor, my mother teaches high school literature. And they approve of this engagement? Min-jun didn't hesitate. They're thrilled. They've heard me talk about Adanna for 5 years. My mother said it was about time I stopped being an idiot and told her how I felt. Adanna nearly choked on her wine. Min-jun's hand found her knee under the table, squeezing gently, a warning or reassurance, she couldn't tell which. Smart woman, your mother, Ngozi said approvingly. When will we meet them? Soon, Adanna cut in. We're still working out the logistics. Logistics. Her mother sniffed. In my day, we didn't need logistics. We met, we married, we made it work. Times have changed, Mom. Clearly. Ngozi's eyes drifted to Chisholm and Daniel, her expression softening. At least one of my daughters is giving me a wedding to attend. The barb hit its mark. Adanna felt Min-jun's hand tighten on her knee, anchoring her before she could snap back. We're thinking next spring, Min-jun said smoothly. Cherry blossom season in Seoul. Small ceremony, close family and friends. Adanna wants to keep it intimate. Adanna stared at him. He was improvising, spinning details of a wedding that would never happen with the same ease he used when debugging code. And her mother was eating it up. Spring, Ngozi repeated, her eyes narrowing. That's specific. Adanna's been dreaming about cherry blossoms since her semester here, Min-jun continued, his thumb now drawing circles on Adanna's knee in a way that was definitely not helping her concentration. I want to give her that. She deserves everything she's ever dreamed of. Chisholm practically melted across the table. That's so romantic, Min-jun, Daniel, why didn't you think of something like that? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. I did propose on a rooftop under the stars. In Seoul. Where you live. Not exactly exotic. Neither is London, Daniel muttered. The tension was building, and Adanna could see Chisholm's smile starting to crack. She should have felt vindicated, a small petty part of her did, but mostly she just felt exhausted. All proposals are special when they're sincere, Adanna said, surprising herself. Location doesn't matter as much as intention. Chisholm's grateful smile made Adanna's stomach twist with guilt. After dinner, the party moved to the courtyard for drinks and dancing. Traditional Korean music mixed with Afrobeats, and people were already starting to dance, the alcohol loosening inhibitions. Adanna escaped to the veranda, needing air, needing space from the performance she'd been giving all night. The Seoul skyline glittered in the distance, and she leaned against the railing, letting the cool night air wash over her. You handled that well. She turned to find Min-jun standing in the doorway, his tie loosened, his jacket slung over one shoulder. The lights from inside backlit him, and for a moment Adanna forgot how to breathe. Your improvisation skills are terrifying, she said. Cherry blossoms? Spring wedding? Where did that come from? You mentioned it once. 5 years ago, during cherry blossom season. You said if you ever got married, you'd want it to be then. He stepped onto the veranda, coming to stand beside her. I remembered. You remember something I said 5 years ago? I remember everything you say. He said it simply, like it was obvious, like everyone catalogued the random comments of their best friends and stored them for hypothetical fake engagement scenarios. Adanna's chest felt tight. Why are you really doing this, Min-jun? I told you. No, not the glass in the hand thing. The real reason. Because this, she gestured between them, at the ring on her finger, at the entire elaborate deception, this is above and beyond friendship. You're lying to my entire family. You're using your grandmother's ring. You're inventing wedding plans for a marriage that's never going to happen. Why? Min-jun was quiet for a long moment, his hands gripping the railing. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. Because I couldn't stand the thought of you going through this alone. Because when you called me and I heard your voice break, something in my chest cracked open and the only thing I could think was that I needed to fix it. I needed to make it better. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. Because you're my best friend, Adanna, and I would do anything, lie to your family, pretend to be someone I'm not, whatever it takes, to keep you from hurting. Min-jun. And maybe, he stopped himself, shaking his head. Never mind. Maybe what? It doesn't matter. It clearly does. Adanna stepped closer, her heart hammering. Say it. He laughed, but it sounded pained. You really want to do this now? Here? Yes. Fine. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as his tell when he was about to say something he couldn't take back. Maybe I'm tired of pretending I'm just your friend. Maybe I've been in love with you for 3 years and watching you pine over Daniel nearly killed me. Maybe when you called and told me he was marrying your sister, part of me was relieved because it meant you'd finally have to let him go. And maybe," his voice dropped to barely above a whisper, "maybe this whole fake engagement thing was just an excuse to have you look at me the way you used to look at him." The world tilted. Adanna felt like the veranda had dropped out from under her feet. "You're in love with me? Forget it." Min-jun turned away, but Adanna grabbed his arm. "Don't you dare. You don't get to drop that and then walk away." "What do you want me to say, Adanna? That I've been pathetically in love with my best friend for years while she was with someone else? That every time you called me crying over Daniel I wanted to fly to London and punch him in the face? That seeing you wear my grandmother's ring has made it almost impossible to remember this is all fake?" His voice was raw now, stripped of its usual careful control. "This was a mistake. I shouldn't have." Adanna kissed him. She didn't think about it, didn't plan it, just grabbed his face and pressed her lips to his because it was the only way to shut him up, the only way to make sense of the chaos screaming in her head. For a second he froze, shocked, and then his hands were in her braids and he was kissing her back with 3 years of pent-up longing. It wasn't soft or sweet or tentative. It was desperate and hungry and tasted like wine and truth. His hands slid down to her waist, pulling her closer, and she made a sound against his mouth that would have embarrassed her if she could think straight. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-jun pressed his forehead to hers. "That was for show," Adanna said quickly, panic flooding through her. "In case anyone was watching. We need to be convincing." She felt him go still. "Right. For show. Min-jun. We should get back to the party." His voice was carefully neutral now, all emotion locked away. "People will notice we're gone." He walked back inside before she could say anything else, leaving Adanna alone on the veranda with the taste of him still on her lips and the terrible realization that she'd just made everything infinitely more complicated. The rest of the evening was torture. Min-jun played his role perfectly, attentive fiancé, charming conversationalist, the picture of a man in love. But there was a distance in his eyes now when he looked at her, a careful politeness that hurt worse than anger would have. They danced when Chisholm insisted, Min-jun's hand at her waist, their bodies moving in perfect sync the way they always had. But every touch felt loaded now, every accidental brush of skin a reminder of what had happened on the veranda. "You two are so natural together," Chisholm gushed, watching them from the sidelines. "It's like you were made for each other." "We've known each other a long time," Adanna said, her voice strained. "We're comfortable." "It's more than that." Chisholm's expression turned wistful. "You look at each other like you're the only people in the room. That's how you know it's real love." Adanna's eyes found Min-jun's, and for a moment the distance cracked and she saw everything he'd been hiding, the longing, the hurt, the desperate hope he was trying to kill. Then he looked away, the walls slamming back up. By the time they left, Adanna's face hurt from fake smiling. The drive back to Min-jun's apartment was silent, the air between them thick with everything unsaid. He pulled into the parking garage and killed the engine, but neither of them moved. "We need to talk about what happened," Adanna said finally. "Do we?" "Yes. You can't just tell me you're in love with me and then pretend it didn't happen. You're the one who said it was for show." His voice was flat. "I'm just following your lead. Min-jun, please. I'm tired, Adanna. Can we do this tomorrow?" "No. We're doing this now." She turned in her seat to face him. "You've been in love with me for 3 years? Does it matter?" "Of course it matters." "Why?" He finally looked at her, and the rawness in his eyes made her chest ache. "What difference does it make? You kissed me and immediately called it fake. You made it very clear where you stand." I panicked. Clearly. I didn't know what to say. "You just dropped this massive confession on me and she stopped, frustrated. I needed a minute to process." "And have you?" "Processed?" Adanna opened her mouth, then closed it. Had she? Her head was spinning, her heart racing, and every time she thought about that kiss her stomach flipped in a way that had nothing to do with Daniel and everything to do with the man sitting next to her. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "I don't know what I'm feeling right now. Everything's confused and complicated, and you just got out of a relationship with someone you clearly still have feelings for." "I don't have feelings for Daniel." Min-jun's laugh was bitter. "You were in love with him for 3 years. You don't just turn that off." "You're right. I don't. But seeing him tonight, dancing with Chisholm, looking at her the way he used to look at me, I realized something." She took a shaky breath. "I'm not heartbroken anymore. I'm angry. I'm hurt. But I'm not in love with him. Maybe I haven't been for a while and I just didn't want to admit it." "Adanna." When I saw you tonight, when you were talking to my mother and making up stories about our wedding and remembering things I said 5 years ago, my heart was racing. And it wasn't because I was nervous about the performance. It was because of you. Her voice cracked. And that terrifies me. Min-jun's expression shifted, hope flickering in his eyes. Why does it terrify you? Because you're my best friend. You're the one constant in my life, the person I call when everything falls apart. If we do this, if we cross this line and it doesn't work out, I lose you. And I can't lose you, Min-jun. I can't. He reached across the console, his hand finding hers. You're not going to lose me. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I've loved you for 3 years and I'm still here. I watched you date someone else, listened to you talk about him, helped you through the breakup, and I never stopped being your friend. That doesn't just disappear. He squeezed her hand. But I also can't keep pretending anymore. So you need to decide what you want, Adanna. Because this fake engagement thing? It's killing me. Adanna stared at their joined hands, at the ring on her finger that suddenly felt less like a prop and more like a promise. I need time. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? I'll give you all the time you need. But we still have to get through this wedding together, and that means we still have to pretend to be engaged. Can you do that? Could she? Could she spend the next 5 days pretending to be in love with Min-jun while trying to figure out if she actually was? I'll try. That's all I'm asking. They went upstairs in silence. Min-jun disappeared into his room with a quiet good night, leaving Adanna alone in the guest room with her thoughts and the weight of everything that had changed. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the kiss over and over. The way his hands had felt in her hair. The desperation in the way he'd pulled her closer, like he was afraid she'd disappear. The sound he'd made when she deepened the kiss, half moan, half surrender. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chisholm. Tonight was perfect. I'm so happy you and Min-jun are here. He's amazing, Ada. Don't let him go. Adanna stared at the message, then at the ring on her finger. Don't let him go. As if she had any idea how to hold on, the next morning arrived too early and too bright. Adanna woke to the smell of coffee and found Min-jun in the kitchen, already dressed, looking like he'd gotten about as much sleep as she had. Morning, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. There's coffee. And I made toast because I know you can't function without breakfast. Thanks. She poured herself a cup, the domesticity of the moment making her chest ache. We have the hanbok fitting at 10, Min-jun said, checking his phone. Then lunch with the wedding party at noon. Chisholm wants to do a traditional tea ceremony demonstration in the afternoon. Great. More quality time with Daniel. Min-jun's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. The careful distance from last night was still there, a wall between them that had never existed before. Are we going to talk about it? Adanna asked. About what? Don't do that. Don't pretend nothing happened. He set down his coffee mug with deliberate care. What do you want me to say, Adanna? I laid everything out last night. Now the ball's in your court. Until you figure out what you want, we stick to the plan. Fake engagement. Supportive fiancé. No complications. We're already complicated. Then let's try not to make it worse. He grabbed his keys. Get ready. We leave in 30 minutes. The fitting was held at a traditional hanbok shop in Insadong, the kind of place tourists flocked to for photos but locals knew held the real treasures. Chisholm was already there, surrounded by bolts of silk in every color imaginable, her excitement infectious despite everything. Ada. You're here. She pulled Adanna into a hug. I have the perfect hanbok for you. It's this gorgeous deep blue with gold embroidery. You're going to look stunning. The shop owner, an elderly woman with sharp eyes and gentle hands, led Adanna to a changing room. The hanbok was indeed beautiful, traditional yet modern, the blue fabric bringing out the warmth in her dark skin, the gold thread catching the light. When she stepped out, Min-jun's eyes went wide. He was standing near the window, already dressed in a traditional Korean suit in charcoal gray, and for a moment neither of them could look away. You look beautiful, he said quietly. You clean up okay yourself. Chisholm clapped her hands together. Oh my God, you two need to take photos. This is too perfect. Chisholm, Adanna started, but her sister was already positioning them by the window, adjusting fabric, moving Min-jun's hand to Adanna's waist. Closer, Chisholm instructed. You're engaged, not strangers. Min-jun, look at her like you love her. That won't be difficult, he murmured, so quietly only Adanna could hear. The shop owner snapped photos while Chisholm directed, and Adanna was hyper-aware of every point of contact. Min-jun's hand at her waist, the way his chest pressed against her back when Chisholm made them stand closer, the whisper of his breath against her ear. "Smile, Ada," Chisholm said. "You look terrified." "I'm just worried I'll trip in this thing." Min-jun's hand tightened on her waist. "I won't let you fall." The words felt like more than reassurance about fabric and footwear. Adanna's eyes found his in the mirror, and something passed between them, an understanding, a promise, a question neither of them knew how to answer. "Perfect," Chisholm declared. "These are going in the wedding album for sure." Daniel appeared then, dressed in his own hanbok, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane." "No worries," Chisholm said, kissing his cheek. "We were just getting couple photos of Ada and Min-jun. They look amazing, right?" Daniel's eyes swept over them, and something flickered in his expression. "Yeah. Amazing." The lunch that followed was at a traditional Korean restaurant, the kind with low tables and floor seating that made Adanna's long legs cramp within minutes. She ended up pressed against Min-jun's side, their thighs touching, his arm along the back of her cushion in a way that looked casual but felt electric. Chisholm's bridesmaids were there, 3 Korean women who worked with her at the marketing firm and seemed lovely if a bit intense about wedding planning. They peppered Adanna with questions about her own engagement, and she found herself weaving the story Min-jun had started, adding details she didn't know she'd thought about. "He proposed at my favorite restaurant in London," Adanna heard herself say. "It was snowing, which never happens in November, and we'd just finished dinner when he got down on one knee right there by the Thames." "That's so romantic," one of the bridesmaids sighed. "What did you say?" "I cried," Adanna said truthfully, though the tears she was remembering were from last night, not a proposal that never happened. "I couldn't even get the words out. I just nodded and cried and probably looked like a complete mess." Min-jun's hand found hers under the table. "You looked perfect." The way he said it made her believe he could actually see that moment, that fictional proposal that felt more real every time they talked about it. "When did you know?" another bridesmaid asked Min-jun, "that she was the one?" He didn't hesitate. "The night she took glass for me. We were at this pub in London, some company dinner that got rowdy, and this fight broke out. I didn't even see the glass coming, but Adanna did. She just moved. Put herself between me and danger without thinking twice." His thumb traced the scar on her palm. "I was holding her hand in the emergency room, watching them stitch this up, and all I could think was that I'd never met anyone who cared about people the way she does. Fierce and protective and completely selfless. That's when I knew." The table had gone silent. Even Chisholm looked misty-eyed. God, that's beautiful," one of the bridesmaids said. "Daniel, why can't you be romantic like that?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "I proposed on a rooftop under the stars. That's romantic." "It's nice," Chisholm said quickly, but there was something in her voice, a note of doubt that hadn't been there before. After lunch, they moved to the Hanok estate for the tea ceremony demonstration. A traditional Korean tea master walked them through the rituals that would be incorporated into the wedding, and Adanna found herself paired with Min-jun for the practice. The ceremony required them to sit across from each other, to bow in unison, to share tea from the same cup in a gesture of unity and respect. It was intimate in a way Adanna hadn't expected, their faces inches apart, their movements synchronized from years of friendship. In traditional Korean weddings, the tea master explained, the couple shares tea to symbolize their commitment to support each other, to share both bitter and sweet experiences. Min-jun lifted the cup to Adanna's lips. His hand was steady, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful control he was exerting over every movement. She sipped, and the tea was indeed bitter, the kind that made her want to grimace. Then it was her turn to offer him the cup. Their fingers brushed as she lifted it, and his eyes never left hers as he drank. "Beautiful," the tea master said. "You two have practiced before?" "No," Min-jun said. "We're just in sync." After the demonstration, Adanna escaped to the garden, needing air, needing space from the intensity of pretending that was starting to feel less like pretending. She found a quiet spot near a koi pond, watching the fish circle beneath the surface. "Mind if I join you?" She looked up to find Daniel standing there, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. "It's a free garden," she said. He sat down on the bench beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a moment, neither spoke. "You seem happy," Daniel said finally. "With Min-jun." I'm glad." "Are you?" "Yeah. I am." He sounded genuine. "I know I don't have the right to care about your happiness after what I did, but I do. And seeing you with him, the way he looks at you, that's real, Adanna. That's what you deserve. You don't know what we have. I know what I'm seeing. The way he watches you when you're not looking. The way he touches you like you're precious. The way he talks about you like you hung the moon. Daniel's voice was quiet. I never did that, did I? I never looked at you like that. Adanna's throat tightened. Why are we having this conversation? Because I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the half-assed excuse I gave you when I ended things. He turned to face her. I was a coward, Adanna. You scared me because you were so sure about us, about our future, and I wasn't. I didn't know how to tell you that, so I ran. And then I met Chisholm, and she was easier. She didn't expect me to be something I wasn't ready to be. So you're saying I was too much? No. God, no. I'm saying I was too little. You deserved someone who matched your intensity, your certainty, your courage. I wasn't that person. He gestured back toward the house where Min-jun was visible through the window, talking with Chisholm. But he is. And you should stop fighting it. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I've seen the way you look at him when you think no one's watching. That's not pretend, Adanna. That's real. Before she could respond, Min-jun appeared in the garden, his expression tight. Sorry to interrupt. Chisholm's looking for you, Daniel. Something about the ceremony timeline. Daniel stood. Right. Thanks. He looked at Adanna one more time. Think about what I said. Once he was gone, Min-jun sat down on the bench, leaving more distance between them than Daniel had. What did he want? To apologize. To tell me I deserve better. Adanna laughed humorlessly. Apparently my ex-boyfriend is now my relationship counselor. What did he say? That what we have is real. That you look at me like, she stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Why? You already know where I stand. I need time. I know. Min-jun stood, shoving his hands in his pockets. But time's running out, Adanna. We have 3 more days of this wedding, and then we're supposed to go back to being just friends. And I don't know if I can do that anymore. Min-jun. I'm going back inside. Take all the time you need. He walked away, and Adanna sat alone in the garden, Daniel's words echoing in her head and her heart pounding with the terrible realization that she was running out of time to figure out what she wanted, and that what she wanted might have been right in front of her all along. That evening, Chisholm organized a pre-wedding celebration at a trendy restaurant in Gangnam, the kind of place with mood lighting and cocktails that cost more than dinner. The wedding party filled 2 tables, and alcohol flowed freely as toasts got progressively more emotional. Adanna was on her 3rd glass of wine when one of the bridesmaids stood up, swaying slightly. I want to toast the couples. Chisholm and Daniel, Min-jun and Adanna, you give us all hope. Everyone raised their glasses. Min-jun's hand found Adanna's under the table, and she couldn't tell if he was offering comfort or seeking it. Tell us how you really knew, another bridesmaid demanded, pointing at Min-jun. The glass story was beautiful, but when did you actually realize you were in love with her? Min-jun was quiet for so long Adanna thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice low enough that she had to lean closer to hear. There wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 small ones. It was the way she laughed at my terrible Korean puns even when she didn't find them funny, just because she knew it made me happy. The way she'd stay up until 3 a.m. my time just to hear about my day, even when she had work at 7 a.m. The way she remembered my grandmother's death anniversary every year and sent me her favorite recipe because she knew I'd want to cook it. His grip on her hand tightened. It was watching her be brave when she was terrified, kind when she had every reason to be bitter, strong when the world tried to break her. I didn't fall in love with Adanna in one moment. I fell in love with her in 1,000 moments across 3 years, and by the time I realized it, she was already so deep inside my heart that I couldn't imagine her anywhere else. The table was silent. Someone sniffled. Chisholm was openly crying into Daniel's shoulder. And Adanna couldn't breathe. Because the way he was looking at her, that wasn't acting. That was raw, honest truth, and everyone at this table could see it. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard, Chisholm whispered. Adanna stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need air. She practically ran to the bathroom, locking herself in a stall, her hands shaking as she gripped the cold metal walls. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. 3 years. He'd been in love with her for 3 years, watching her with Daniel, helping her through the breakup, never saying a word. And she'd been so blind. The bathroom door opened. Ada? You okay? Chisholm. Of course. I'm fine, Adanna called out, trying to steady her voice. You're clearly not fine. You just ran out of there like the building was on fire. Chisholm's footsteps approached the stall. Come out. Talk to me. Adanna unlocked the door. Her sister stood there, concern etched across her beautiful face, and suddenly Adanna felt like the worst person alive. Here she was, having an emotional crisis about falling for her fake fiancé at her sister's wedding to her ex-boyfriend. "I'm just overwhelmed," Adanna said. "The wedding, seeing Daniel, all the questions." "Is it Daniel?" Chisholm's voice was careful. "Because if you still have feelings for him, we need to talk about that." "What?" "No. God, no." "Then what is it?" Chisholm leaned against the sink. "And don't say nothing, because I know you, Ada. Something's eating at you." Adanna met her sister's eyes in the mirror. "Do you remember when Dad died? You asked me how I knew when to let go of something I loved." "I remember. I told you that you'd know because holding on would hurt more than letting go." Adanna's voice cracked. "But what if I was wrong? What if sometimes holding on is terrifying not because it hurts, but because it might actually work?" Chisholm was quiet for a moment. "This is about Min-jun." "I don't know what it's about." "Yes, you do." Chisholm turned to face her fully. "Ada, I've watched you two all week. The way he looks at you, that's not fake. And the way you look at him when you think no one's watching? That's not fake either. We're supposed to be pretending. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, the only person you're pretending for is yourself." Chisholm's voice was gentle. "You're terrified, and I get it. After what Daniel did, trusting someone with your heart again is scary. But Min-jun isn't Daniel. I know that. Do you? Because you're acting like someone who's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Min-jun just told a room full of people that he's been in love with you for 3 years in 1,000 different moments, and you ran." Chisholm grabbed her hands. "Ada, that man is in love with you. Real, actual, terrifying love. And I think you're in love with him too. So what are you running from?" Adanna's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "What if I mess it up? What if we try this and it destroys our friendship? He's my best friend, Chisholm. He's the one person who's never left, never lied, never let me down. If I lose him..." "You won't lose him. Not someone who's loved you like that for 3 years." Chisholm squeezed her hands. "But if you keep running, you'll lose him anyway. Just in a different, more painful way." When they returned to the table, Min-jun was gone. Daniel leaned over, his expression apologetic. He said he wasn't feeling well. Took a cab back to his place. Adanna's stomach dropped. Did he seem okay? Honestly? He seemed like someone who just put his heart on the line and watched it get crushed. She grabbed her purse. "I have to go." "Ada," Chisholm started. "I'm sorry. I'll see you tomorrow at the rehearsal. I need to fix this." The cab ride back to Min-jun's apartment felt like it took years. Adanna's mind was racing, replaying every moment of the past few days, the way he'd held her hand, the kiss on the veranda, the careful distance he'd maintained even as his eyes betrayed everything he was feeling. She'd been so focused on not losing him that she hadn't realized she was losing him anyway. The apartment was dark when she let herself in with the spare key he'd given her. She found him on the balcony, standing at the railing, still in his dress shirt but with the tie gone and the top buttons undone, staring out at the Seoul skyline. "You left," she said quietly. "I needed air." His voice was flat, carefully controlled. That speech was too much. "I shouldn't have." It was perfect. He turned to look at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. "Then why did you run?" "Because I'm terrified." Adanna stepped onto the balcony, closing the distance between them. "Because you're right, I have been fighting this. Fighting you. Fighting us. Because losing you would destroy me, and I didn't think I could survive being destroyed again. Adanna. But Chisholm made me realize something tonight. I'm going to lose you anyway if I keep doing this. Keep pretending. Keep running." She took a shaky breath. "So I'm done running." Min-jun went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that when you kissed me on that veranda, I told myself it was for show because I was too scared to admit the truth. That I've been thinking about kissing you again every second since. That watching you this week, being your fake fiancé, hearing you talk about our imaginary future, has made me realize I don't want it to be imaginary." Her voice broke. "I'm saying I think I've been falling in love with you too, and I was too blind to see it." "You think?" "I know. God, Min-jun, I know. Because when Daniel apologized today, I felt nothing. But when you walked away from me in the garden, my chest felt like it was caving in." She stepped closer, close enough to feel his breath on her face. "Because you're the one I call when I can't sleep. You're the one whose opinion matters more than anyone else's. You're the one who makes me feel safe and seen and understood. And I've been calling it friendship because I was too scared to call it what it really is." Which is love. The word came out as a whisper. I'm in love with you, Park Min-jun. I'm in love with my best friend, and it terrifies me, but not as much as the thought of losing you. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then his hands were in her braids and his mouth was on hers, and this kiss was nothing like the one on the veranda. This was 3 years of longing unleashed, desperate and hungry and absolutely real. Adanna's back hit the balcony door as Min-jun crowded her against it, his body pressed against hers, his hands everywhere, her face, her waist, her hips. She gasped against his mouth, and he swallowed the sound, deepening the kiss until she couldn't remember why she'd ever thought this was a bad idea. Say it again, he murmured against her lips. I love you. Again. I love you, Min-jun. I love you, I. He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent, like she was something precious he'd been waiting his whole life to hold. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. I've wanted to hear you say that for 3 years, he whispered. I'm sorry it took me so long to figure it out. You're worth the wait. His thumb traced her lower lip. But we need to talk about what this means. For us. For after the wedding. What do you want it to mean? I want this to be real. Not fake, not temporary. Real. His eyes searched hers. I want you to be my actual fiancé. Not now, not until you're ready, but someday. I want the spring wedding with the cherry blossoms. I want to introduce you to my parents as the woman I'm going to marry. I want everything, Adanna. But only if you want it too. Her eyes burned with tears. I want it. All of it. With you. Even if it means long distance for a while. You in London, me in Seoul. We'll figure it out. We always do. She kissed him softly. Besides, I've been thinking about transferring to the Seoul office anyway. My Korean's gotten pretty good. He laughed, the sound bright and relieved and happy. Your Korean is terrible. You'll just have to teach me then. I can think of worse ways to spend my time. They kissed again, slower now, savoring it, and Adanna felt something settle in her chest, a rightness she'd never felt with Daniel, a certainty she'd been searching for her whole life. We should probably tell people, she said eventually. That this isn't fake anymore. Tomorrow. Tonight, I just want this to be ours. They moved inside, and Min-jun pulled her onto the couch, tucking her against his side like he'd done 100 times before. But this time his hand was in her hair, her head on his chest, his lips pressing kisses to her temple. Can I ask you something? Adanna said softly. Anything. The glass. The pub fight. You said that's when you knew. But when did you actually fall in love with me? Min-jun was quiet for a moment. Remember the night your dad died? You called me at 2 a.m., couldn't even get the words out, just sobbing. I stayed on that video call for 6 hours. Didn't say much, just sat there while you cried. And at one point you looked at me and said, thank you for not making me be okay. His voice was soft. That's when I fell. Because you trusted me with your broken pieces. And I knew right then that I'd spend the rest of my life making sure you never had to be alone in your pain again. Adanna's tears spilled over. That's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever said to me, she finished, her voice thick with emotion. She shifted to look up at him, and the tenderness in his eyes made her heart stutter. You've been carrying this for so long. All those nights I called crying about Daniel, talking about whether we had a future, whether I should stay or go, you listened to all of it while you were in love with me. It wasn't a burden, Adanna. You were never a burden. His fingers traced patterns on her shoulder. Loving you has been the easiest thing I've ever done. Waiting for you to see it was the hard part. She kissed him again, trying to pour 3 years of missed chances and misread moments into it. When they broke apart, she stayed close, her lips brushing his as she spoke. I see it now. I see you. And I'm not going to make you wait anymore. Good. Because I'm done pretending to be patient. His hand slid to the nape of her neck, his touch sending shivers down her spine. I want you, Adanna. Not as my friend, not as my fake fiancé. As mine. Really mine. I'm already yours. I think I have been for longer than I realized. They stayed on the couch for hours, talking and kissing and making plans for a future that was suddenly, impossibly real. Min-jun told her about the apartment he'd been looking at with an extra bedroom for a home office. Adanna admitted she'd already researched the Seoul office transfer process weeks ago, before any of this happened. They laughed about how blind they'd both been, how many moments they could have had if either of them had been braver sooner. We should get some sleep, Min-jun said eventually, though he made no move to let her go. Rehearsals at 10 tomorrow. I don't want to go to the guest room. His breath caught. Adanna. I'm not asking for, I just want to sleep next to you. Like this. Is that okay? More than okay. He stood, pulling her up with him, and led her to his bedroom. They changed in comfortable silence, her in one of his oversized shirts, him in track pants, and when they slid under the covers, he pulled her against his chest like they'd been doing this for years. This feels right, Adanna whispered into the darkness. It does. His lips pressed against her forehead. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we tell everyone we're keeping the engagement. They're going to be so smug. Chisholm will never let me live this down. Worth it. She fell asleep to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, feeling safer and more certain than she had in years. The wedding rehearsal was chaos, a beautiful, organized chaos of flowers and ribbons and people rushing around with clipboards. Adanna and Min-jun arrived together, their hands intertwined, and she could feel the difference between yesterday and today. No more careful distance. No more pretending. Chisholm took one look at them and squealed. Oh my God. Something happened. Something definitely happened. What are you talking about? Adanna tried to sound innocent, but she was smiling too wide. You're both glowing. And he can't stop touching you. And you're looking at him like, Chisholm gasped. You told him. You actually told him you love him. Maybe. Maybe? Chisholm grabbed her shoulders. Ada, this is huge. When? How? Tell me everything. Last night. After I left the restaurant. And that's all you're getting right now because we have a rehearsal to do. But Chisholm was already pulling Daniel over, whispering excitedly in his ear. Daniel's eyes found Adanna's, and he smiled, genuine, happy, relieved. He gave her a subtle thumbs up, and she laughed despite herself. The rehearsal went smoothly, everyone moving through their positions, practicing the fusion ceremony that would blend Korean and Nigerian traditions. When it was Adanna's turn to walk down the aisle as maid of honor, Min-jun was waiting at the end, his eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. You're supposed to be watching the bride, she whispered when she reached him. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be looking, he murmured back. After the rehearsal, the wedding party gathered for the traditional Korean tea ceremony, the real one this time, not a practice. Adanna and Min-jun sat together as Chisholm and Daniel performed the ritual for their parents, the solemnity of the moment settling over everyone. Next year, that'll be us, Min-jun whispered in her ear. Presumptuous. Accurate. Adanna's mother approached them during a break, her expression shrewd. You two are different today. Different how? Adanna asked, trying to sound casual. You stopped pretending. Ngozi's eyes sparkled. Did you think I couldn't tell? A mother knows these things. I knew the moment I saw you together that this engagement was fake. Adanna's stomach dropped. Mom. Don't panic. I didn't say anything because I could also see that you were both too blind to realize you actually loved each other. She patted Min-jun's cheek. I'm glad you both finally figured it out. Now, about those 3 grandchildren. MOM. But Ngozi was already walking away, laughing. The rehearsal dinner that night was at an upscale Korean barbecue restaurant, the kind with private rooms and servers who cooked the meat at your table. The wedding party was loud and happy, toasts flowing as freely as the soju. When it was Adanna's turn to toast, she stood, her hand finding Min-jun's for courage. I wanted to toast my sister and Daniel. Chisholm, watching you plan this wedding, seeing how happy you are, it's reminded me that love doesn't follow a timeline. It doesn't happen the way we expect. Sometimes it sneaks up on us. Sometimes it's been there all along, waiting for us to be brave enough to see it. Her eyes found Min-jun's. And sometimes the person you're meant to be with is the person who's been there through everything, the good, the bad, the broken pieces. The person who doesn't make you pretend to be okay when you're not. The person who knows all your flaws and loves you anyway. Min-jun's hand tightened on hers. So here's to Chisholm and Daniel, Adanna continued, raising her glass. May your love be patient and kind. May you always be each other's safe place. And may you find the courage to be honest about what you want, even when it's terrifying. Everyone drank, and Chisholm was crying again, and Adanna sat down to Min-jun pulling her close and whispering, that was perfect. The wedding day itself dawned clear and beautiful, cherry blossoms drifting through the air like snow even though it was early autumn, a gift from the unseasonably warm weather. The Hanok estate was transformed into something magical, traditional Korean lanterns strung between trees, Nigerian fabrics draped artfully over chairs, 2 cultures blending seamlessly. Adanna helped Chisholm get ready, pinning her sister's hair, adjusting her dress, a stunning fusion of Korean hanbok and Nigerian iro and buba. You look beautiful, Adanna said, her throat tight. I'm so nervous, Chisholm admitted. What if I mess up the vows? You won't. And even if you do, Daniel will love you anyway. That's what this is about, remember? Not perfection. Just love. When did you get so wise about love? Adanna thought about Min-jun, probably getting ready in another room, and smiled. Recently. The ceremony was beautiful, every moment carefully choreographed yet feeling spontaneous and real. Adanna walked down the aisle to where Min-jun stood with the groomsmen, his eyes finding hers immediately. She took her place across from him, and throughout the entire ceremony, they kept stealing glances at each other. When Chisholm and Daniel exchanged vows, promises in both Korean and English, traditional and modern blending together, Adanna felt tears slip down her cheeks. Min-jun's eyes were suspiciously bright too. And when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," and Daniel dipped Chisholm in a kiss that made everyone cheer, Adanna realized something profound. She was genuinely happy for them. No bitterness, no pain. Just joy for her sister and relief that Daniel had never been meant to be hers. Because she was meant for someone else entirely. The reception was a blur of dancing and food and joy. Traditional Korean dances mixed with Nigerian music, and at some point everyone was on the dance floor, cultures and languages blending in a celebration of love. Min-jun pulled Adanna outside during a quiet moment, leading her to the same garden where she talked with Daniel days before. But this time, everything was different. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Min-jun, you already gave me your grandmother's ring. This is different." He pulled out a small box, and when he opened it, Adanna gasped. Inside was a delicate gold chain with a small pendant, 2 interlocking circles, one engraved with Seoul, the other with London. "Until we're in the same city," he explained, fastening it around her neck. "A reminder that distance is temporary but what we have is permanent." She touched the pendant, her eyes burning. "I love it. I love you. I love you too." He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. "And I meant what I said. Next spring, cherry blossoms, you and me. For real this time." "Is that a proposal?" "Not yet. When I actually propose, you'll know. It'll be unforgettable." His eyes sparkled. "Though I'll probably still cry like an idiot. I'm counting on it." They kissed as fireworks exploded overhead, Chisholm's grand finale for her wedding reception. And Adanna thought about how a week ago, she'd come to Seoul dreading this wedding, heartbroken over an ex, desperate to survive. Now she was standing in a garden kissing the man she loved, with a future spread out before them like a promise. "We should get back," Min-jun said eventually. "Before Chisholm sends a search party. 1 more minute. We have all the time in the world now." "I know. I just want to remember this moment." The night everything changed. Everything changed days ago, Adanna. We were just too stubborn to admit it. Hand in hand, they walked back to the reception, where Chisholm immediately cornered them with demands for their wedding date. Min-jun fielded the questions while Adanna watched him, this man who'd loved her quietly for 3 years, who'd pretended to be her fiancé to save her from heartbreak, who'd waited patiently for her to see what had been in front of her all along. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "I want updates on the real wedding plans by next week." Adanna showed it to Min-jun, and he laughed. "Your mother doesn't waste time. She's been waiting for grandchildren since I turned 25. Should we tell her we're not quite there yet?" "Absolutely not. Let her dream." As the night wound down and guests started to leave, Adanna found herself on the veranda one last time, Min-jun's jacket around her shoulders against the cooling air. Seoul stretched out before them, glittering and infinite. "What are you thinking about?" Min-jun asked, his arms wrapping around her from behind. "About how I almost missed this. How if Chisholm hadn't married Daniel, if you hadn't offered to be my fake fiancé, if I hadn't been brave enough to finally admit what I was feeling, we might have stayed just friends forever. I would have told you eventually. I was getting desperate." "How desperate?" "I was planning to confess after the wedding. Figured I had nothing left to lose at that point." She turned in his arms to face him. "I'm glad you didn't have to wait that long." "Me too." He kissed her softly. "Ready to go home? With you? Always." They said their goodbyes, Chisholm hugging Adanna so tight she could barely breathe, whispering, "Thank you for being happy for me. For us. It means everything. I am happy. Genuinely, completely happy. I know. I can see it." Chisholm pulled back, her eyes shining. "And I can't wait to be your maid of honor next year." "Who says you get to be maid of honor?" Sister code?" "Duh." In the car ride back to Min-jun's apartment, Adanna's head resting on his shoulder, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace. Not the forced calm of someone pretending to be okay, but real, deep peace. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now? Now we figure it out. Together." You talk to your boss about the Seoul transfer. I look at bigger apartments. We tell my parents. We make plans. His hand found hers. And we stop wasting time pretending we're not completely in love with each other. Sounds perfect. That night, curled up in Min-jun's bed, their bed now, she supposed, Adanna thought about the journey that had brought her here. The heartbreak that had felt like an ending but was actually a beginning. The fake engagement that became real. The best friend who'd been her soulmate all along. Min-jun, she whispered into the darkness. Thank you. For waiting. For seeing me. For loving me even when I was too blind to see it. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. You're worth every second of waiting. Every moment of uncertainty. Every minute of loving you from afar. His voice was soft, full of emotion. You're worth everything, Adanna. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it. She fell asleep wrapped in his arms, the ring on her finger, the pendant at her throat, and the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. 6 months later, during cherry blossom season in Seoul, Min-jun would propose for real, on one knee in Uedo Park, surrounded by falling petals, with a speech that made her cry and laugh and say yes before he even finished asking. Her transfer to the Seoul office would come through 3 weeks after that. They'd move into a bigger apartment together, one with a view of the Han River and enough space for both their lives to merge seamlessly. And 1 year after Chisholm's wedding, Adanna would walk down an aisle lined with cherry blossoms toward the man who'd loved her through everything, who'd pretended to be hers until she was ready to make it real, who'd waited patiently for her to see what had been there all along. But that night, in the quiet darkness of his bedroom, with Seoul's lights flickering through the window and his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Adanna simply held on to the man she loved and let herself believe in happy endings. Because sometimes the best love stories are the ones that were there all along, waiting for you to be brave enough to see them.
Thank you, besties, for watching. Hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional roller coasters that'll have you crying and smiling at the same time.